What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode review for Nier Automata. This is episode 5, and with me, as always, I have Loosepad.
So just like I predicted last week, we're already going into Pascal's village. However, there were some differences as to how Tubi and Ninus ended up getting to this village in the first place. In the game, you actually go to this village after you beat the songstress boss battle in the amusement park, and then like this one machine it tells Tubi and Ninus that he can guide them over to the village. However, in this one, the situation is a little bit different. Tubi and Ninus end up going to this village by being tasked by Lily to, delivering oil to the village. But the way they get there is they have to go through the abandoned shopping mall in order to get there.
Yeah, which that is one of the ways you can get there in the game, but you can also get there through the amusement park.
Yeah, but the thing about that is you go through the abandoned shopping mall to get to this old abandoned castle, which is probably it's going to be shown later on in probably maybe the next episode or the episode after that. But yeah, it's just the way they get there is a little bit different. And not to mention, there's a certain character that we finally see is seen under much different circumstances compared to how Tubi and Ninus met him in the game.
Yeah, so of course, that character is Emil, and he shows up in the game in the abandoned shopping mall, where he's just a disembodied head. And you basically and then he shows up later on in the game as basically like an item vendor, where his head is attached to a vehicle, and he just kind of moves around the world. I feel like they might, well, in the anime we see his head is attached to a tree, which is interesting. I feel like they might be doing that because in the game, like, it kind of, him being like attached to a vehicle kind of served the purpose of like, if I guess kind of getting to him easier, because he would just be moving around, so instead of him just being in like one location. So I guess in the anime maybe they wanted to do something different where he's not attached to like a truck or whatever. So he's just attached to a tree. But what's also interesting is that it seems like he's possibly asleep. I'm not sure, because in the game he's obviously like he's not asleep. He's just kind of, his head's just kind of rolling around, and he's still like active and all that. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting that they made that change. Not only that, but we also get quite a few different like new scenes that are of course not in the game, such as of course like what we saw in one of the previous episodes where 9S would hack some one of the machines, and he would see basically like see things that happened in like way in the past, like from the events from Nier Replicant. And we basically get to see more of that in this episode because of course, like I mentioned before, Emil seems like he's inactive, so 9S attempts to hack him, and when he does, which as soon as they played the track Emil Sacrifice, which is from Nier Replicant, I kind of got the impression that we were going to see more things from Nier Replicant, and of course we do. And it's pretty cool to like just to see these to see these scenes from Replicant, because a lot of people, like myself included, did not really expect to see much from Replicant going into this anime. So it's kind of interesting that they decided to include these scenes. But we see some of the characters from Replicant, like Kayane, Brother Nier, Yona, and we see some of the locations from Replicant, like the Shadow Lord's castle, and also the library. Of course, we also see Devila and Popola. The problem with this is that, of course, like I mentioned before, a lot of people that have played Replicant are going to understand what this is, but of course, like, this is like a lot of newcomers who have just played Automata, or even worse, if they haven't played Automata, they're going to be really confused by these scenes. They're going to be wonder what the hell these, like, who these characters are, what these locations are, like, why they're important. They're going to be. They might recognize Devil and Popola because we've seen them already, but then they're just going to be more confused because they're going to wonder like why they're showing up in this scene. So I think it's just going to lead to a lot of newcomers specifically being really confused. But a lot of the fans who have already played Replicant are going to of course, going to recognize all these things. But if you haven't, you're just going to be kind of scratching your head, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of a thing. Like once they introduce, like, I'm curious, like, with all these changes, especially like how they introduced Emil in this episode as being this dormant head inside of a tree. I'm curious, like, how this gonna play into the main plot of Automata now, because it's
Well, to be fair, Emil isn't really that involved in the main plot of Nier Automata. He's just kind of he's there as mostly like a as to sell you items and also just to give you I think he gives you one side quest. He might get. I think there actually is another side quest that involves him that leads to, I think like a secret ending that's kind of not exactly a joke ending, but it's not really. You're not really supposed to take it that seriously, as far as I know, but uh, it's not necessary. But yeah, basically, he's there for side content in the game, so he doesn't really play too much of a role in the plot. But there is some like one of his side quests does expand upon like I guess somewhat of the plot of the game because it goes into what happened before the events of Automata and like what Emil did before that.
yeah. I mean, like I said, I've never played a Replicant, unfortunately, and hopefully, after I beat Automata, I'll probably get to Replicant whenever I get the chance. But it's
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I'm just hoping that like that the Replicant stuff isn't like won't I'm just hoping it won't deviate, the main plot of the anime to like such a massive extent, because I'm just worried that it's gonna like I remember like in one of the previous animes we reviewed, like for the first time, I think it was Tales of Systeria the Cross, where they tried to implement
Yeah.
elements from Tales of Berseria, but it just didn't work out all that well from when we last watched it. So I'm just concerned that they're going to try to do the same thing with implementing a lot more replicant into Automata.
It's possible, but I mean, I feel like it makes more sense here because specifically like for Emil, he of course he is connected to Replicant because he was involved in the plot of Replicant, and also like some of the some of the some of the machines having like for example in I think it was episode 3, the machines having memories of one of the locations from Replicant and what happened there. Facade makes sense because of the masks they're wearing, which are masks that were worn by the people of Facade. The problem too is I think the problem with these references is, like I mentioned before, people that don't know like why people don't know about Replicant are going to be confused because they're not going to know like all those masks are from this location in Replicant, and that's why they're showing like this scene from Replicant because it has to do with that, because this was probably the same area that Facade was in like thousands of years ago before what happens in Automata.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean it's definitely a nice addition to include that if you're a replicant fan. But most of this episode is mainly set in Pascal's village, in which 2B and 9S end up meeting Pascal for the first time, and then exploring, the pretty much like how peaceful this community is compared to all the other machines that they ended up fighting in prior episodes. Um, it
Yeah.
it's also good that that they kind of expand the behavioral aspects of these machines compared to like how it's portrayed in the original game, because in the game you don't really explore all that much of Pascal's village. I mean, you just go around certain areas. You just sometimes you get like certain side quests from all these different machines that want specific tasks done, but it just doesn't really get into like the whole heart of the whole situation of like why the village you know was created in the first place. um In this,
Speaking
yeah.
of which, I do like how they kind of reference some of the side quests, like that one where there's a machine that has locked himself inside a house, and this happens in Route B. You try to get him out as 9S, um, and they kind of reference that in the episode,
Mhm.
where like I guess his mother is like trying to get him out.
Yeah, and, I think I think there was maybe a couple other things, but yeah, it's I think that was only the only notable, reference from one of the side quests. Um, but in terms of, like, the founding of this village, we find out, from Pascal that he creates the village. Well, actually, it's thanks to the Emil head that Pascal ended up finding, way back when he was a combat unit from, I guess, from thousands of years prior. So, after seeing this Emil head, I guess Emil's consciousness through some like I don't know, maybe some telekinetic like mind thing. He just like sends some kind of the message that that the machine should live or do something else. So it in a way it helped Pascal open his eyes or just have some kind of epiphany that what he's currently doing is pretty much meaningless. So he just pretty much like disobeys his original programming to to become a more peaceful unit and follows up with like um gathering up more machines to follow his example.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't think this is something we really get in the game, which like is Pascal's past and what happened to him before he founded the village. Uh, I, I think we might hear about it sometimes in passing, but we don't really get like they don't really go into it.
Hmm.
So I thought that was like an interesting change. The same thing with Emil. Like I find it interesting how he is. I guess you would say more involved in the plot, considering he had to do with the founding of the village, which in the game I don't think that's the case. So I find that kind of interesting. They're doing that in the anime,
Hmm.
um, and like they worship the Emil head on the tree.
Yeah, like almost they worship Emil like if like he's some kind of god of sorts.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, but this also creates a lot more conflict with 9S because he was programmed uh, to pretty much fight all these machines, but he never expected coming across, like these machines having like pretty much going beyond their programming of of being like these fighting killing machines.
yeah. And I also find interesting how they had like kind of the machines fighting over this one item too, like, kind of showing that I guess the machines have the capacity for violence and to in fighting as much as humans do.
Yeah, and it gets to the point where 9S sees this and he almost wants to like I guess intervene to stop the machines fighting over the music box. But uh I think one of the operators ends up calling him to report on what's going on, and 9S decides to not report anything, especially what he's seen in the village, and
Yeah.
that's pretty much where we leave off. But of course, we do finally get to see some scenes with both Adam and Eve, both at the beginning and the end of this episode.
Yeah, and it's pretty much the same scene from the game where they're um like Adam is reading a book and trying to acquire knowledge, and Eve wonders what the point of that is because they could just, I guess, download the knowledge or something. But Adam says it's better to, I guess, take it in yourself or something like that. Um, Also, like, yeah, the episode kind of ends with 9S and 2B talking about, like, I guess, uh, going shopping one day because this is a conversation they have when they're going through the mall. They like 9S wants to buy her a T-shirt and all that. That happens in the game, but I like how they did it here, um, and they kind of expand upon it in the at the end of the episode.
Yeah, it is a good moment between both 2B and 9S developing their relationship a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, we can tell like even back in the first episode that 2B had, despite like her programming, that she does contain some amount of feelings for 9S at times. And of course 9S of want to. Um, of course, there's this one scene in which the Ninus wanted 2B to call him Nines instead of Ninus every single time, and
Mm.
eventually, it's it's something that eventually grows into 2B. Eventually, there is a plot line in the game in which Ninus wants 2B to call him Nines, instead of his like Ninus every single time. Eventually, 2B does uh eventually warm up to calling him Nines later in the game. But yeah, that's that's pretty much the extent of what happens to this episode. But yeah, I am glad that they are bringing back the whole like building up the relationship between 2B and 9S.
Yeah, and of course, at the end of the episode, we get another puppet show, um, where they kind of just reference this one element from the game where you can self-destruct and lose part of your clothing or whatever. Um, but it's funny because Emil in this one is actually awake and he says something along the lines of like I can do that too. And when he self-destructs, of course, it's like I guess the equivalent of a nuclear explosion or something because it wipes out everything. And it's basically another joke ending. But yeah, I thought it was all the puppet shows have been pretty funny.
Hmm. Yeah, but overall, I did enjoy this episode. I did, like despite some of the changes and some of the replicant references, I do like that they're expanding a little bit more with Pascal and his village, compared to how it was portrayed in the video game. I feel like
Yeah.
that for people who've played the game will, I guess version 1.1a is a better companion piece to the game. If you're a fan of the game,
Yeah,
I
that's what it feels like. It feels less like something for newcomers and more so like something for people who have already played. I would say actually both the Automata and Replicant. It really feels like a companion piece to that. And I really feel like a lot of these changes are probably changes that were implemented by Taro because he probably is involved with the anime production.
Mhm.
So, yeah, but I thought like I said, I do agree. I think it's a good episode. I really was surprised by a lot of the references that we're getting to Replicant. I feel like we should probably expect more of that in some of the future episodes because there are other references in Automata to Replicant. So they probably will have more scenes that are from Replicant. But yeah, I don't really have too much else to say about the episode. I think it's one of the best ones so far in my opinion, just because it has the most changes, and I found a lot of those changes interesting, and I think they do work well for the anime.
Yeah, especially adding more into Pascal's development as a character compared to how he was like in the original game, which he just gave
Yeah.
you tasks most of the time, and oftentimes like he would join you in battle in a couple of occasions. But that's pretty much it.
They do expand upon his character later in the game, but yeah, I do feel like he's a character that could have done more with. But yeah, so I like how they're doing that in the anime.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't have too much else to say about the episode. I don't know if you have anything else to say about it.
It was a good episode. Definitely. The big plus is them expanding on Pascal's village and how it works as as a functioning community compared to like how it was portrayed in the original game. And
Yeah.
also the number of changes they included, including adding maybe some replicant references. Even though I haven't played the game, it does pique my interest in wanting to play the game more after finding out about this. So yeah, hopefully, I mean, I'm just hoping that the replicant stuff doesn't deviate the automata plot too much, because I mean, it's a good way to add that into the bigger universe with the whole Nier stuff. But like I said, I just hope it doesn't deviate too much. I mean, the one thing
Yeah.
that, I mean, heck, maybe they might end up making like a Nier replicant episode into the show. Maybe, I don't know. It's possible.
I do wonder if they're testing the waters to see if people would like to maybe see a replicant anime.
Yeah, I mean,
That could be the case.
yeah, considering that showed off what was it, Kaine, the Nier character from the Replicant game. I mean, it's
Well, the other Nier characters as well.
yeah, it looks possible that they might end up doing something like maybe like a flashback sequence episode character. Um,
I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, guys, that all being said, until next time, we will see you all later.